Hello and welcome. You're watching News Central Television. I am Judith Atibi. Here are the stories making headlines just beyond the continent. And we begin the news in the U.S., where the European Union has paused its retaliatory tariffs against the United States after after President Donald Trump suspended planned tariff hikes for 90 days. Trump has maintained a universal 10% levy on all countries except China, alongside a 25% tariff on aluminum, steel and cars entering the U.S. However, his temporary retreat has eased transatlantic trade tensions. Meanwhile, the trade war between the U.S. and China has intensified, and Washington has imposed a 125% tariff on Chinese goods, prompting Beijing to retaliate with 84% levies. Asian and European financial markets have posted gains following the news, with investors reacting positively to reduce uncertainty. However, Trump has called it a great day, signaling optimism despite growing pressure over his global trade policies.
Well, I thought that people were jumping a little bit out of line. They were getting yippy, you know? They were getting a little bit yippy, a little bit afraid, unlike these champions, because we have a big job to do. No other president would have done what I did. No other president. I know the presidents, they wouldn't have done it. And it had to be done. What was happening to us on trade, not only with, you know, if you look at it, not only with China, but China was by far the biggest abuser in history, and others also, but somebody had to do it. They had to stop.
And now to discuss this, we're joined by Global Affairs analyst Ejike Okpa. Mr. Ejike, many thanks for doing this with us, shall we? Can you tell us what strategic motivations might underlie Trump's decision to pause tariff hikes for 90 days, and how might this affect his leverage in ongoing trade negotiations?
Yeah, thank you for having me, and good evening, because I know it's 8 p.m. in Nigeria. Well, you know, this is what people do when you are in a transaction, you know, bilateral, multilateral, because, you know, tariff is going to be for a country. You know, it's not to throw it on everybody. It's going to be the countries that want to sell things to America, you know, what are the terms and conditions? And then, you know, like the president says, China has been the most abuser. And because, you know, China will send you something and they don't buy anything from you. No country will survive on those sort of, you know, parameter. You want to buy from me, I want to buy from you. But if they start to take advantage of you, then what you do, you're going to find a way, because tariff is revenue to the government. It's not, you know, a revenue to the specific importer or exporter. That's how the government, which is the excise and custom dues, that goes to the government when it gets to the port, whatever the port is, EC or airport. So what Trump has done with the pause is to now get specific negotiations. You know, countries looking at how this is going to impact their own market is going to now want to talk. And at the end of the day, it's a pendulum swing. You know, it goes until, you know, it stops somewhere, and that somewhere is where an agreement is made, and every party is going to walk away. China has, you know, taken advantage of many countries. You see what they do in Africa. They come over there, they lend you money, and if you don't pay, they take over something. And nobody should allow that. You know, every country has their sovereignty, and it has to be respected. And when that respect is no longer being given, because, you know, trade is reciprocity. If it's no longer being done and somebody is just going to see you as a place to dump their own goods, you're going to have to shut down the border. You're going to have to shut down the port. So I applaud the president for taking this stand. It's taken because, again, you know, prior to this time, everybody acquiesced to China, and then China has taken this false, you know, position like, oh, we are the manufacturer of the world. Yeah, I was in China in January. It's a very depressing, you know, country, regardless of what they put out there. But that is neither, you know, neither here nor there. The point is that what the president is doing is necessary, and any country have to do what, copy and paste that in order to safeguard and protect their own market.
Mr. Okwa, I'm hearing you, but if I'm trading with a company, right, and the other company Most definitely. If you're saying it's a dumping ground, but there are customers on the other side that needs those goods as sent over there. There are manufacturers that go to China because there's more cheaper labor there. They have the advantage of population. They have the advantage of cutting edge technology. And there are people who are ready to buy from them. And so and that means employer of jobs, whether or not the U.S. is trading back goods. So don't you think it's all about the ball falls in the U.S. to be able to maximize that trade that is already open to find a way? Because what you're saying is a dumping ground, but there are consumers that are taking off these goods, there are businesses, there are people who reach out to China to outsource for manufacturing issues. So what gives?
No, your premise is fine. The premise for your argument or counter is fine. But the point is that same job we can do in America. There, 20-something or 30 years ago, America said we're going to outsource everything. Now we have to look back and say that's not favoring us.
Right. So why then not hammer that on the U.S. on the traders that go to China? Why not look at manufacturing? The manufacturing arm of things. Why then impose such tariff on China when it's just trying to do business? Why not put that issue on America and its occupants and citizens and manufacturing arm to see how best to improve it, as opposed to closing the border completely and just shutting out China and letting all those other people and customers and even those on the country to suffer?
No, I think you're stretching the point. We don't owe China success. We don't have to open our borders to make China feel good. If at some point it's a relationship, it's a partnership, just like, divorce. When you get to a point where it's no longer working, everybody goes their way. So at the time, maybe it works for America and it works for China. And then we now realize that, this is not fair for us. Our own people need the job. American made goods are the best brand in the world, whether anybody likes it or not. And that's why even Germany, most of the Mercedes-Benz today made are assembled in America. We are not importing any cars from. The same thing with Toyota, the same thing with BMW. They are now realized in order for you to capture the market where the consumers have money to spend, they have to be in country. And that's why they are building plants here. So China doesn't want to do that. And they say, we're going to sell it cheaper to you. And then we go into, again, I'm using this term loosely, we're going to dump your market. You're going to pay us and we're not buying anything from you. What does China buy from America? So that's why we said, okay, fine, we still sell to you, but we're going to put 125% on your goods, and they say 84. So you see that they're not going to say, we're going to do 125. We're doing that to make them go. And then now we are improving not improving. American companies are coming back home, and then we are now creating conditions to have them do the same thing we are buying from somebody else.
So what you do is you increase tariffs for other companies. Anyway, let's just move on, shall we? With Trump maintaining.
I understand what you're saying.
Look, okay. I wish we could go on, but I'm being told we don't have enough time. So, but anyway, with Trump maintaining steep tariffs on key imports, how sustainable is the current pause in trade tensions between the EU and the US?
Again, you heard what he said. His 10% is paused for 90 days. Each EU countries, are going to come in and they're going to negotiate. Remember, this is all about getting the partners to the table and talk through what it is that they're having concerns with. At the end of the day, that's going to be an agreement. And that A agreement will be all goods coming in or a specific good. So, there's no need to panic. This is a time where you get your negotiator, your trade experts to start to look at, hey, what do we do differently and how do we do this thing in order to keep trading with whomever we want to trade? Everybody needs trade, but you don't do it at your own expense. You don't stifle your own economy because you want to please another country. Self-preservation is the first order of business. Anything else is playing to the gallery. Nobody has to do China good. Nobody has to please them because China is not pleasing you. So, this is time to stick it to them so that way they also understand that, hey, we're not doormats for them to step on or step over. Stick it to China, stick it to India, stick it to anybody. That way you can encourage your own domestic strength to rise. Don't let China be the one that is selling you everything. You can make the same thing. Let them sell their own people. Let them sell the 1.4 billion Chinese, satisfy them before they give to somebody else. Somebody has to feed themselves before they ask somebody else, hey, do you need some food? What China has done is create this facade about being a superpower.
I asked about EU. I didn't ask about China. I asked about EU. I was asking about the 90-day pause. But we're out of time. Mr. Ejike, I must say thank you. Ejike Okpa here is a foreign affairs analyst. Give us a bit of insight on the trade war between China and US and the 90-day pause from the US president onto EU. Let's move away from the US, shall we? Now, in the meantime, Latin American leaders have urged unity in response to US tariffs imposed by former President Donald Trump, warning of potential economic disruption across the region. At a community of Latin American and Caribbean states, CELAC summit in Honduras, the Brazilian President Luis Inácio Lula da Silva condemned the U.S. tariffs, describing them as arbitrary and warning that they have destabilized global markets and driven up prices. Now, meanwhile, 11 heads of states have reportedly attended the meeting, which also included a delegation from China, a country seeking to expand its influence in the region. Trump's 10% baseline tariff, introduced April 5th, has remained in effect despite rollbacks on other duties. Mexican and Brazilian leaders have voiced concerns, stressing the need for greater regional integration. Now, the host president said that the U.S. is redrawing its economic map without regard for Latin America's future.
Hoy, después de 15 años del primer encuentro de esta comunidad, nos encontramos en un escenario internacional muy distinto. Son momentos de cambios profundos en el comercio mundial que afectan a nuestros países. Sin embargo, considero que hoy más que nunca es un buen momento para reconocer que América Latina y el Caribe requieren de unidad y solidaridad de sus gobiernos y de sus pueblos, a fin de fortalecer una mayor integración regional, siempre en el marco del respeto mutuo y la observancia de la soberanía e independencia de nuestros países y de los acuerdos comerciales que cada uno de nosotros pueda tener.
Este sueño de la unidad de la patria grande es hoy más urgente que nunca. Cuando el viejo orden neoliberal impuesto a nuestros países colapsa y las grandes potencias como Estados Unidos redibuja su mapa económico sin preguntarse qué pueblos quedan atrás.
O nos vamos solos o nos ayudamos. Y yo creo que debemos ayudarnos. Es mi propuesta, que profundicemos la ayuda y la colaboración mutua en América Latina y el Caribe. Y no caigamos en la trampa de resolver los problemas solos, porque nos van a destruir. O nos vamos a autodestruir, como ha hecho Colombia.
And in North America, Dominican Republic President Luis Abinader on Thursday attended the wake in Santo Dominico of the merengue singer Ruby Perez, who was killed when a roof collapsed at the crowded nightclub where he was performing. The head of rescue operations on Thursday reported that the death toll has climbed to 218. He said that 189 people have been rescued alive since the collapse. Rescuers had worked frantically since the collapse in the early hours of Tuesday to dig out survivors from the rubble of the popular Jet Set Club in Santo Domingo. Now, Robbie Perez was performing on stage when the disaster occurred. We now head to Europe, where we tell you that King Charles III and Queen Camilla attend a military reception in Ravenna on the fourth day of their state visit to Italy. Crowds line the streets waving British flags as they cheer for the monarch and his Queen. Fabio Baraglia, the acting mayor of the city, described the event as one of the most significant chapters of the Renava history, as it marked the 80th anniversary of their liberation from Nazi fascism.
Siamo orgogliosi di celebrare alla vostra presenza una delle pagine più significative della nostra storia, l'80° anniversario della liberazione dal nazifascismo e con esso il sacrificio di tutti gli uomini e le donne che decisero di anteporre alla propria vita quegli ideali supremi di libertà, di giustizia e di uguaglianza che sono alla base della nostra democrazia e della nostra Repubblica.
Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson is signaling a beat of relief and opportunity amid global trade tensions, especially as the EU hits pause on its plans to hit back at US tariffs. This move comes after Trump unexpectedly backed off from raising duties on EU goods, a dramatic shift that essentially isolates China as the main target in the ongoing trade war. Kristersson's statement underscores just how hard Sweden's economy has been hit. Market instability and tariff threats can spook investors, slow exports and hurt confidence, especially in a trade-reliant country like Sweden.
Vi välkomnar ju lägre tullar och vi välkomnar öppenhet för handel, och om detta nu skapar utrymme för de förhandlingar som ett enigt EU igår ville se, så är det en stor fördel.
Men det blir också väldigt tydligt, tycker jag.
Still in Europe, Prime Minister Keir Starmer says towns and cities such as Doncaster, where he announced a £30 million investment in its airport, had been underestimated and their people ignored. Sir Keir said jobs and opportunities need to be created for people across the UK, including the city in South Yorkshire. He says the investment will create 5,000 good, well-paying, secure jobs in the region and rebalance power control and destiny back in their communities.
The world is changing and we as a country must change with it. In other words, we've got to rise to the moment here, recognise where our future lies, renew Britain and deliver security for working people. We are not a government that is just going to sit back and hope. I strongly believe that is how politics has failed our communities for so many years, because in the past, politics has tried to manage crises and that has only led to managed decline. We're going to rebalance power, control and destiny back in communities. A politics that's more about partnership with you, not to you. And that's why I'm really delighted to back the Mayor's plans for Doncaster Airport.
Let's go on a short break, shall we? When we return, Turkey releases over 120 people detained in mass anti-government protests. We'll bring you the details of this and more after this break. Stay with us. And the news continues in Europe, where European defense ministers have held fresh talks in Brussels on a potential coalition of the willing to secure Ukraine's peace amid stalled US-Russia peace efforts. The meeting, led by Britain and France, is geared towards outlining plans for deploying troops to support a Ukraine ceasefire. US Defense Minister John Haley, he reaffirmed the coalition's commitment to a lasting peace, while other ministers raised concerns about the mission's goals and the role of U.S. military support. With about 30 countries involved, 6, including the UK, France and Baltic states, have expressed willingness to contribute troops. However, uncertainty remains over the mission's mandate and scenarios like possible escalation with Russia. European officials also stressed the need for clarity, particularly regarding U.S. involvement.
Clear objectives for Ukraine. First, to secure safe skies. Second, to secure safe seas. Third, to support a peace on the land. And fourth, to support the Ukrainian armed forces to become their own strongest possible deterrent. There are 30 countries here today, 30 countries bound by a simple belief that peace is possible and we must be ready for when that peace comes. That's why the work of this coalition is so vital. We're stepping up We're serious. We're sending a signal to President Putin and to Minister Umarov and the Ukrainian people. We stand with you in the fight, and we will stand with you in the peace.
In southwestern France, more than 1,000 defense industry workers have continued demonstrating near Bordeaux after over 14 weeks of strike, calling for a better distribution of wealth generated by major firms like Thales, Dassault and Arena Group. The protest comes as Thales employees are pushing for a salary boost after the company's record-breaking financial performance in 2024. Now, workers say around 80% of production at the Maragnex site is now stored. Now, this includes a significant delay in the production of the RBE-2 radar.
Le résultat était exceptionnel, on avait 4% de revalorisation salariale et cette année où les résultats sont historiques, on n'a plus que 2, on ne comprend pas. Alors les grévistes purs et durs, il y en a 70, par contre quand il y a des mobilisations comme ça, on peut aller jusqu'à 600, 800 personnes et à ce jour la ligne de production RBE2 Rafale, donc c'est le radar qui équipe le Rafale, est complètement à l'arrêt depuis 3 semaines. Il n'y a aucun radar qui sort depuis... Oui, c'est inédit, c'est inédit.
Let's head to the Middle East, where Turkey on Thursday freed more than 120 people detained during last month's mass anti-government protests. Courts in Istanbul released on bail 127 defendants, most of them university students who were arrested at their homes on March 24th after taking part in demonstrations sparked by the jailing of the city's opposition mayor, Ekrem Imamoglu. Imamoglu, who was arrested on March 19th on corruption and terrorism charges, is seen as the main challenger to President Recep Tayyip Erdogan 22-year rule. His imprisonment has been widely viewed as politically motivated and sparked nationwide protests. The government insists Turkey's judiciary is independent and free of political influence. And that's all we can take from beyond the continent. It's back to the continent. And if you are in Nigeria and you see anything, make sure to send us your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number now showing on the screen. And while you're at it, make sure to follow us on social media. We're at News Central TV on all social media platforms. You can always watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422. We're on GoTV channel 23, Star Times channel 274. Find us on Avo TV or stream us live on YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Judith at TV. Good night.